Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Rainbow Conversations with me, Richard Dunbar. And on today's episodes, we have two pretty amazing guests, if I'm going to be honest with you. And our first guest is none other than critically acclaimed dancer and choreographer, the Billy Elliot of the Welsh Valleys, the person who's going to tell us why the boot's on the other foot, none other than the amazing Liam Riddick. And second on our episode, in the Rainbow Spotlight, we have Ray from the Bookish type in Leeds, a queer independent bookshop based in the heart of Leeds City Centre. It's going to be an amazing episode, people. It's going to be inspiring. We're going to hear loads of amazing stories. Let's do this. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this new episode of Rainbow Conversations with me, Richard Dunbar. And I've got to say, the guest we have got today is extremely special. I'm really excited for this interview. This person originates from the south of Wales, somebody who started their career at a very young age in ballet, then went on to study contemporary dance in Newport. Then went on to even bigger things at the London Contemporary Dance School before graduating and going on to work for nearly a decade with the Richard Alston Dance Company, where he was critically acclaimed on several occasions from the Critics Circle National Dance Awards, and went on to perform with loads of amazing people and events who I'm sure we'll talk about in the course of this conversation. So it is my great pleasure to interview the very talented Liam Riddick. Liam, how are you doing?
I'm good. What a lovely introduction that was.
Very, very well deserved. Well deserved. So, do you want to just say a little bit about yourself, Liam, in case I missed anything out there?
Yeah, well, like you said, I'm originally from Wales. I've kind of been dancing all my life. Started when I was about 6, and it's kind of all I've done. I wasn't too much of an academic at school. And all I was interested in school was art and drama and PE. But dance is what I've always wanted to do. And like I said, I came to London, studied, got my degree. And yeah, I've been working professionally for over a decade now in London, which seems crazy. But still going, still hanging on. But yeah, you've said pretty much everything in there.
Amazing. So in terms of getting into dance then, because people's journey into certain jobs and sectors always really interests me in terms of how it started. So you said it happened and you were doing it from the age of 6. Was your family particularly sort of arts, culture, dance orientated, or what did it happen by mistake in terms of you going to a local dance class? How did that journey start?
It's no one in my family is to do with the arts, really. I mean, in school, I think my sister played the instrument and stuff like that. But no, I get this question loads, and I've answered it loads to say that I don't really know. When I was 6, the earliest memory I have of it is seeing Michael Flatley when Lord of the Dance used to be like on the telly back in the day. You know, they used to be like the Saturday night thing, and they used to show them at Wembley or something. And I don't know, there was just something about him, his energy and his, I don't know, it's just, I just drawn to him. And for some reason, I asked my mum, can I go to dance class? Didn't know if there was one available. Didn't know why I asked, but I did. And yeah, kind of the rest is history. When I started, first off, I was kind of not bullied a bit, but I was kind of taunted a bit by the other girls in the group because I was the only guy, which is weird for some people because they think, you get tortured probably outside of the dance but I wasn't. I'm not sure if it was jealousy or something, because I might have got a little bit extra attention. But that kind of pushed me away from it for like a little bit. Tried football, hated it, and then went back to dance. I never looked back.
Well, that's interesting. So how long from those girls who were sort of, jealous of you and, what it quite over a long period in terms of where they were making comments, and how long did you come out of it for? Because I think that's really interesting for
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just when I first started because no boys did dance when I was younger, especially in the valleys down by me. Like no one did it, and I think because I was someone different and they didn't like it. But it only like I tried it and I was like, oh, I don't like this. Why is they being horrible to me? Don't need that. So then it was literally a couple of months, and I went straight back because I missed it.
Yeah,
because I enjoyed it too much.
So what was it like in terms of, you mentioned you had a sister there, sort of, what was that sort of family life growing up? Were your sister into that? Did you say, you said she played an instrument? How was that family life, and did your family life influence your love of the arts in any way?
Well, me and my sister were really lucky because mum and dad always supported us no matter what we did. We could have done anything we wanted to do and they would have backed us 100%. There's a funny thing between me and my sister because I started with dance and then I got into ballet and I was with the Royal Ballet Junior Associates. And then my sister was really into rugby and she played for the Wales under-18 squad.
Amazing.
So there was this local paper got whiff of the story and they headlined it as Boots on the Other Foot. And they were fascinated how a little Welsh boy, was doing ballet and then my sister was playing rugby for Wales. And there was this big old story that blew up and we were in lots of different papers and people were fighting for the story. And it got to a point and it was ridiculous that we had people on the doorstep. They were offering my parents holidays for the story. They were offering us money. Trisha Goddard got in touch. Trisha.
I love that.
I know. We had a letter in the post with Trisha on top. We were like, this is ridiculous now. But it was a story that, because Billy Elliot had just come out at the time as well, like around-ish. So everyone was like hot on that young kid from a small town or small village going on to do ballet. And then even better, his sister plays rugby.
I love that.
Yeah, like I said, my mum and dad were always supportive, like of my sister's rugby career through and through. And then they took me everywhere. And paid for everything, as parents do.
Yeah. No, that is amazing. That's a really interesting story. And Boots on the Other Foot, I think that's going to be the title of this episode now. So there we go. So I just think that's sort of like really interesting. So that you sort of developed like your love and you were well supported in terms of your family, etc. So you came to do ballet. Was that the first sort of dance form you did, or did you try loads and that was the one you loved before you moved on to contemporary? How did that happen?
Well, I started with like modern tap and jazz, which I think every kind of kid does. I mean, little girls, they start when they're 3, they do ballet, but in the local school that I was with, there was only modern tap and jazz. And then I went somewhere separately then because they said, oh, you should do ballet as well, because ballet was fundamentally how you gain strength as a dancer and blah, blah, blah. So initially it was modern tap and jazz, but then I found ballet and then went off on the ballet route a little bit, but knew I wanted to do the more exciting performance side of it. And I didn't really find contemporary till I was about 14. And there was a company in Cardiff, back then was called Diversions, but now they're called National Dance Company Wales. And they used to do summer schools. And it was just something different. And I tried it and just absolutely fell in love with it. Yeah, that was my first experience of contemporary.
So, and how would you describe the contemporary sort of dance form? Because I think it's like a bit. I'm really rubbish at dancing. But if you saw me, some might say, "Oh, he's a contemporary dancer." Nobody would ever say that. Trust me. And I say that in jest. But because yes, some people have perceptions of it of being a bit weird and alternative and out there. How would you describe it in terms of as a form? And
it's a really hard question.
Yeah,
so many people have it, because even my sister, sometimes we go on a night out or something and she does contemporary dance and she's basically a tree, and it's like, you're not a tree. People think it's like this hippie kind of movement that happened back in the day. It's not. It's hard as well because contemporary's coming more mainstream, so people see contemporary dance on television and they see it like with open shirts and very dancing with like emotion and telling a story. I guess that's a form of contemporary dance, yes, but it's more like lyrical modern. It's very open, it's very free. It's not like jazz or something that's specifically boxed into one category. There's lots of different things, and there's loads of techniques throughout contemporary dance. There's things like Cunningham technique, Limone, Release, Graham. There's loads of different things. So it's really, really vague, but it's a wide range of different genres.
So are there any, like, within the genre, is there any sort of people who sort of pioneered the way for contemporary dancers. So who would be your idols as contemporary dancers? Are there certain people you look up towards in terms of developing techniques and things?
I mean, I wouldn't say people that I look up to as in like idols, but definitely there's so many people that pioneered the way for contemporary dance. There's incredibly famous people that founded certain techniques like Merce Cunningham, Martha Graham, Jose Limon, Isadora Duncan. There's so many big names out there that people don't necessarily know, but then there's pioneers that I love who made dance happen in Great Britain. People like Bob Cohen, who the late Bob Cohen, Sir Bob Cohen, I should say, and Robin Howard, who founded London Contemporary Dance School, that founded the place. There's loads of different people that brought it alive in England because it was massive in America and it came over here. And I think when it first came over here, it was kind of that hippie kind of relaxed, free kind of way of moving. I think that's where it gets its title from, when people think of it as like being a tree and doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's too many people to kind of pinpoint. And I mean, when I talk about idols and stuff, it's people like who are still dancing, who have been dancers, like people that people might not necessarily know as names or celebrities or people in the industry, but I have a few people that I just idolize and who I adore watching. And
let's name check them, because this is what this is about. It's about giving space and voice to people who perhaps don't, get the recognition they deserve.
Oh my God, there's too many to think. Jonathan Goddard is one of them. He was one of the dancers I looked up to with Rich Dawson Dance Company before I joined it. And then he moved on to Rombit, and he was just someone that every time I watched him on stage, it was just jaw-dropping for me. I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to be like him. Martin Lawrence is another one. He was my rehearsal director at Rich Dawson Dance Company, and Martin was just exquisite on stage. You'd see him, and for me, it was just so inspiring. Male dancers who were doing it and doing it so extraordinarily well and showing their talent in such a pure form, for me, was just like mind-blowing to see at such a young age, and coming to London young and seeing people like that doing what I want to do was just incredible.
Yeah. And how important is that still, that point about having male idols for young males in terms of getting into dance? Because there is still, with some, perhaps a perception that it's something only girls should do, a very heteronormative view. But then on the other side of it as well is that thing about being like a young sort of queer boy going into that art form. And on your identity from that front, did you receive any resistance? And how important is it for somebody like you to speak so openly about how proud you are of who you are as a dancer, but who you are as a gay male dancer?
Yeah. I think it's important as a queer person and as a gay person to speak that way. I don't think necessarily they have to marry in the two and I have to say that I'm a gay dancer, but I think it's extremely important, going back to the first thing you said, that young male dancers should have other male dancers to look up to, in the industry that is so competitive and so hardcore and brutal in a way, because what you do to your bodies and what you put yourself through. I think it's important for you to have role models there for young, inspiring lads to look up to. And then for young, potentially queer boys that have no one, who don't think they have anyone to look up to see guys on stage, whether they be straight, queer, anything. I think it's super important. And yeah, just to feel that they can express themselves in any way that they want to, there shouldn't be any barriers to allow any child to not express themselves the way they want to. And having strong male figures in that world is super supportive for them and gives them the opportunity to like thrive, and express how they feel and express how they move. And
yeah, and I think that will resonate, that point, with a lot of people. And if there is anybody listening to this who may be thinking about getting into dance, whatever their age, actually, whatever your gender, all of that, it's what advice would you give them? Because particularly, I think as well, a big barrier to accessing the arts in some sense is class. So if you're a working class queer young person, your ability to be able to access some of the best schools or even just a dance class in Village Hall might be out of reach because of cost. So, A, what would you say to those young people who think they might have a passion for it? And B, what do we need to do to make the arts more accessible to a wider group of people?
Oof. Hell of a question.
Big question, sorry.
I think COVID has been a big help for this because there's now so much available online. When I was not working through COVID, some of the work that I did get was through teaching online. There's so much available now for free. So even if you can't necessarily afford to go, or if for some reason you can't make it to a class, you can access online. You can get online and try it out, give it a go. As long as you've got some space and you're safe in your practice, you're not going to smack a wardrobe or a bed or something, give it a go. Like I always say, live by the motto that like, if you want to change, you have to change. Or if you want to do it, because it will never happen. You can always think, I want to do that. Just do it. Just try it. You'll never know unless you try. And to make art accessible for everyone, it's tricky when you talk about like class and everything, because there's some areas, some communities that are deprived of the arts. They're deprived of those opportunities for young people, not even young people, anyone, to go and take a class or anything. And I guess it doesn't always come down to money, but it's just, it's tricky because there are going to be some people where that is not available unless you travel to a bigger city or travel to a class. And I think it's just an ongoing conversation, I think, with regards to community and how much art is accessible and how much art is needed or wanted. And I think it's to do with that community or your town or village or something to...
And do you know what? I think that's a really good point, particularly what you're saying there about community. And I think the last 18 months to 2 years, just before COVID struck, did people perhaps value the arts in societies perhaps as much as we should have done? Perhaps we didn't, actually. But I think because of the joy that brought us online, and now as things are starting to open back up, I think there's a greater appreciation for the arts, and I know, like, I'm just looking here now, there were a report in 2019 from the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee in Parliament that said that the arts and cultural sector in the country brings 10 billion to the economy, nearly 250,000 jobs in the sector, so it's a big sector. Now that's going into the sort of pandemic, but we all know what happened then, and particularly for somebody like you who's now worked as freelance as a dancer and as a teacher, how did the COVID pandemic affect you individually? Then we'll get on to the wider, how it affected the sector wider.
I think when you say about people's appreciation for the arts grew in lockdown, it was because the arts is all everyone had. There was television, there was radio, there was music, there was podcasts, there was things, that to do with the arts that people didn't necessarily think, Anyway, but I mean, with the thing, I was on tour with the Ballet Boys, the company I was with, and sorry, my dog's barking. Shush. I was on tour, and we had like a 30 venue tour, and after venue 6, Boris made his announcement and we got cut. And it was just awful because no one knew what was happening. Me and everyone else in the world, we didn't know what the virus was. We didn't know what we could do. All of a sudden we were locked in our houses, and I got a month's contract closure, and that was it. So I wasn't furloughed. There was no support from the government back then, and it was just a terrifying time because I had nothing, and there was just nothing, and it was just stopped, and it was really scary. And I feel like I'm lucky because I've had jobs where I've paid quite a lot of tax. So I was through lifelines from the self-employment income scheme throughout the pandemic. But I know a lot of my friends who are self-employed, always have been self-employed and freelance, and just received nothing. And it's been horrendous for the arts. It's just been absolutely horrendous. I won't swear, but it has been awful. And because us as artists, like musicians, dancers, actors, I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people here, but it's just, we didn't have a voice. No one had our backs. And we got made to feel that our job is not viable. Something that, speaking from me, something that I have always done, something I've done from the age of 6 and worked my way up, got a degree in it, worked professionally for 10 years at a high level. And for then someone to turn around to me and say, retrain, you're not you're special, but you can be deleted in that sense. We don't need your speciality. And it's just awful. It's soul destroying. It's terrible to think of when a world is so scary and everything happening, but then the thought of no backing from the government or no help from the country they've always been in, and always paid taxes for. And it was just terrifying. And it destroyed me personally, because it made me question so much about changing everything. I can't do this anymore. I can't. I can't afford to do it. And it's everything I've done. I spent so much money to train, and this, that, and the other, and then to be told potentially that hideous advert that the government, but the Conservatives put out with that poor ballet dancer saying it's time for, I can't remember her name, Fatima or something it was, or Belinda or something, time for her to think about retraining. And it was just awful. And to throw a spanner in the works, they didn't even pay that photographer to use that image. It was just horrendous. But yeah, it was just a nightmare. And I was fortunate in the sense that I got a little bit of work here and there, teaching on Zoom, teaching at conservatoires, doing masterclasses here and there. But other than that, I've just literally been scraping by for the past 18 months. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's just destroying. It's awful because so many people are on furlough, which is great. But, people who are in dance companies or West End shows or things like that, they weren't furlough for them. It wasn't anything. And we couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to the stage because theatres were still not allowed to be open. Mm-hmm. And then it just grew and grew and grew. And I think people's anger and people's irritation from the government just developed and developed because they started to open things up. They started to bring back football. They started to bring back things in bars where people can go watch football, but we weren't allowed to sit with masks on, isolated in a theatre, spread out. And we couldn't put people on stage, and I went to see productions when things just opened up, and the precautions that went down from everyone on the stage was just incredible. Everyone was socially distanced. The orchestra were all separated, everything. It took one person to get COVID in that company and the whole thing had to shut back down, the whole theatre. Whereas a stadium could stay open or a pub could stay open. It was tit for tat a little bit, and it was just horrendous. And the government, yes, they did put, I think it was something like £1.57 billion into the arts. Great. Thank you for that. Lovely. But I'm not going to see any of that money. None of my colleagues are going to see any of that money. That's going to go to big theatres just to keep them, or just to keep them by for another couple of months. That couple of billion means nothing. And the amount of money, like you said, that the arts brings into the economy that the government seemed to forget about, it was just horrendous. I feel like, speaking on behalf of the whole industry, we were just left in the dark and for all the wrong reasons and just not valid. Like, just to be completely shafted was just, not the best.
Yeah. No, that was I think, again, that statement, really heartfelt and eloquent statement there on behalf of the sector, I think, again, will resonate with a lot of people. But sort of now going forward, as things have started to open back up, but there are places and theatres that have closed. There are people who have gone out of the industry altogether. What do you think now, in order to sort of rejuvenate the industry, what would you do if you were in charge right now, Liam? If you were sat round the table at 10 Downing Street, because based on your performance tonight, I'm quite sure you'd do a way better job than Boris. But what things would you be saying to the decision makers so they can best support you as a dancer, your sector, and the wider arts and culture world? What do the government need to be doing?
I think they just need to pay attention and realize that there's people in this country and people who are working in this country who have been, this is their job, this is their livelihood, just like an office worker, just like a teacher, just like NHS staff. I mean, bad reference there, but it's just like a normal job. We still have that same right to everyone else's not handouts, but everyone else's help that they've been getting. We deserve that as well. And just because you don't see that as being viable doesn't mean that it takes away any less of what I've trained in, and I think that's the thing, like, just to remember that we are people as well, and we are here, and we don't just go away just because you don't see it as being an important part of the economy or part of the sector. We do bring in a lot of money for the economy, and we do bring a lot to people as well. People live for the arts. They live to go out and escape, to go to the theatre, to go to the cinema, to go to see a gig, to see a concert, to see anything, and it's just I think it's just to have our backs a bit more. It's not going to happen. I don't think it ever will happen. But if I was sat around that table, I would be pleading my case big time.
You've got the space here, and who knows, might be listening to this, so...
Boris, if you're tuning in to Rainbow Conversations, drop me a message.
That's what I'd say to him. I stuck my middle finger up there, people, but anyway, sort of going back, because you are, just on that last contribution, very good storyteller, actually. So just going back to your... because there will be people listening here, primarily a queer audience from different parts of the world. There are lots of queer young people who struggle throughout life because they may not have a supportive family. There are a lot who are still closeted. There are a lot of people who go back into the closet, for example, when they go to work. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your journey and that coming out experience for you? How it was it tricky, was it okay, and any sort of advice for people who are more than likely struggling, who might be listening to this right now?
Yeah. I came out when I was, I can't even remember, 24, 25. I think it was around that time. And that was coming out to my family, as in coming out to my parents. I'd come out before that when I was 18. So after I'd moved to London, and it wasn't that I was coming to London for that reason. I was coming to London primarily to find myself, because I came from a small little village in South Wales. I lived a very sheltered life, didn't know anything about the world, never tried an avocado, all that kind of stuff. So it got to the point where I wanted to go to London because I wanted to experience life, or experience the world, all the stuff that I thought I was missing out on. I'd come out to my friends. I was living as a gay person from then onwards, and I don't know why I didn't tell my family. All my friends' families knew, all my close friends' families, but just my initial family didn't know. And I think it's that stereotypical thing of, the rejection and that kind of fear of being pushed away for being yourself. I think every gay person, he, she, they, anyone, feels that natural thing. And I don't think you can say this to a straight person, I don't think they'll ever understand that, because they say, why didn't you just tell them? It's like, it's not as simple as that. It's like a gut, horrible, sick feeling that, like, I knew it was going to be okay. I knew that my parents would be okay with it. It's just, there's something there that just holds back, And I do regret it. I do regret not telling them sooner, because there's a part of my life from the age of 18 to about 25. So about, what's that, 7 years, that they didn't really know me. And that's awful to think that I was keeping that from them for like 6-7 years of their life. They didn't know their son, honestly, And like, bless my dad, he's no longer with us. And I kept that from him for 6 or 7 years, And I regret that. I wish I'd had the courage almost to say it to them before. And like when I made the choice, I didn't even make the choice to come out. It was just, I was home one weekend visiting and I'd been to the supermarket with mum or something. And I came back and I knew for some reason it was going to happen that day. And I was in the kitchen and I was just like, I've got something to tell you. And I was like, no, I need you and dad. You know, it's that feeling like, oh God, I'm going to say it now. And I just felt sick. I felt horrendous. I was crying. It was just all this emotion and everything. And my dad, they kept guessing. They kept saying, have you come into money? Are you in trouble? Are you this? And I'm like, no, just let me try and say it. And I think it was my dad who said like, oh, it's about your sexuality. And I was like, oh. And then he said, oh, you're gay. And I said, yes. And he gave me a hug, a slap on the back, and then went up to his bath because he was running a bath before he came down. He said, oh, as if to say, was that it? Slap on the back, off he went to his bath. And that was fine. Turned to my mum, who's scrubbing dishes at the sink, just like, not angry. But I think my mum was more upset because of that reason. She felt like I'd kept that from her. And I told my mum everything. And I'd kept that from her for a lot of the years, you know, and she got upset because friends of mine's mothers knew me better than she knew me, you know, and she really took that to heart. But she came around quite quickly. And I mean, they're the most incredible. My dad was the most incredible person. So is my mum. And one of the best experiences I have with both of them before dad passed was we went to Pride in Cardiff together. It was so nice. Mum and dad, they always used to go to Mardi Gras. They love it. They sit on the street in Cardiff and watch everyone flounce by and mince down the street, and they love it. They'll sit there all day, and they do it without me. They go every year.
Love that.
And then one year it was Pride in Cardiff, and I was like, "Oh, let's get tickets." And there was just me, mum and dad, my partner Glenn, just singing in a field with drag queens on stage.
Amazing,
it was brilliant. And I was there with my partner, you know, and my parents were there, and we were all just, it was perfect. It was brilliant. That's kind of like my story-ish of how I came out. Yeah.
Just one point on that, and that is a really beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that. But the one thing it's like you said then and focused quite a bit on is how you sort of regretted not telling your parents sooner. Now, I can see why you'd be like that. I was like that when I came out to my mum. Loads of my friends knew before and all that sort of stuff. But sort of similar in that respect. But is the very fact that you couldn't do it, it's not, I think it's unfair that we put the pressure on ourselves that it was almost our fault. And isn't it more a sign of the inequality that still exists in society that we have to actually come out to people, you know?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I think there is just that block that we all think of that rejection because, you know, we've been brought up with that thing of gays are shunned, you know, and they're pushed away. And why is that in our heads that we think that that's going to happen because we say this? Because I'm this person, I'm going to say this to my parents and they're just going to push me away because it's not what they believe. You know, why is that still a normality in this day and age where everything is so accessible now, whether it's about everything from being from what your pronouns are to what sexuality you are to everything. Like there's so many different categories you can fall into in a way, you know, or not fall into, but be a part of or know what group you're with or who you are, you know, as a person. Why do we still have that stigma that it's a negative thing to come out? It shouldn't be a negative thing to come out. It should be that you're proud of who you are. And I mean, surely, I don't know the percentage, but surely it's a higher percentage that most families would just be like, either I knew or we completely support you. It's absolutely fine. Like, why don't straight people come out? Why don't straight people have to say to their parents, "Oh, mum, by the way, I'm straight"? Yeah. You know what I mean? Why is that not a thing?
Yeah, it's like with other, aren't we? It's like there's still inequality, and whilst I'll always shout about the progress the amazing queer diverse community makes on a day by day, week by week, year by year basis, there are still obvious challenges. One big one for me and for many is the absolute vilification of the trans community, which I think's disgusting. We've also got seen reports recently saying hate crime against our community has gone up by over 300% in the past 6 years.
Isn't it? I saw that. It's gone up by a massive percentage. And sometimes you don't see it, but it's still going on. You see articles from like people abroad or people in like in the countries where gay necessarily illegal but really frowned upon, and people are getting killed and people are getting beaten to death because of how they act. It's by people who see it as a different thing. It blows my mind. It's like, what gives you the right to be angry at me for being me? It doesn't make sense in my head, and I don't understand. I guess when religion and stuff like that comes into it, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But I don't understand how people could be so hateful to another person because they believe that man should be with a woman and woman should be with a man. Regardless of whether a person doesn't identify as loving anyone or they're just asexual or pansexual or whatever, that's still a hate thing for people, and they just have to beat the shit out of them for no reason. It's horrendous. And that, like you said, that rise is just insane. It was like 300% or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. For against the trans community in particular. So in terms of that, so I want this podcast, and it will be a tool to agitate for change. And I think by the very fact that there are people like yourself sharing the stories, that will make people think in a different way. But if there are any words of advice you have for people, and perhaps you've sort of had a very direct go at those people who perhaps are having a go at our community, I think that needs to be heard by a lot of people. But is there any advice? So if there's a young queer kid or a queer kid of any age, actually, anybody listening to this right now, and they may be in a situation where the family doesn't accept them, they may be in a situation where they've been a victim of hate crime and feeling quite isolated. What's your sort of advice to them? What can they do, to give them that little bit of hope, perhaps?
I keep talking. There's one thing I've learned over the years. I used to not talk about my feelings, not talk about myself at all. And as I've got older and somewhat wiser, hopefully, talking is the best medicine to get it out in the world. You can get so bogged down in your head. I still do sometimes. I overthink everything and it goes round and round in my head. The moment I talk it out loud, it's out there then, or write it down. I write it down so I see it on a piece of paper. Then it becomes real. It's there in front of me, And I think as gay people, like, obviously I watch RuPaul a lot. Not obviously because I'm gay, but I do love it. But he always says, like, as gay, queer people, we're special because we make our own families, we make our own tribes, And I've got an incredible friendship network around me. And I think that's important for gay people to have that friendship group around them and have those people where they feel most comfortable to be themselves with, and use those people because those people are there as friends to talk about your feelings, talk about how you feel, why you're feeling that way, what's stopping you from doing this. And the moment we keep it inside, it then turns into something else, and potentially then turns dark and lonely and self-isolated in a way. And everyone knows what that feels like over the past 18 months. So my advice would be to really just speak out, and not speak out as in run around with a flag in the street, not like speak out as in pride, but use your voice and talk to people. There's so many helplines out there. If you don't have anyone to talk to as well, there's so many LGBTQIA plus charities to help young people, and there's internet forums and chat rooms, and there's loads and loads of advice and helpfulness. There's help out there that people want to give. So just talk, keep the conversation going.
That's really important. Thank you for that. And for people who are listening, I'll put some of the links in the episode bio for some of those places, like for Stonewall and others who do great work supporting people. What's next for the Billy Elliot of the Welsh Valleys, Mr. Liam Riddick? What's the next steps for you now things have started to lift up and that?
Well, I'm definitely working the freelance world. I'm getting more into choreography, which is exciting. So at the minute I'm working in between London and Wales. So teaching in London at London Contemporary Dance School, where I trained on the BA degree course, which is good. I enjoy it. So I'm doing that, and it's good. It's my steady income. And like I said, I'm also choreographing. So I've just made a piece on Ballet Cymru, based in Newport. and which is going on tour in November, and it's going to be a film which will be released online. And I've also made a piece on a small company in the Ebbw Valley called Fiend Dance. I made that in lockdown on Zoom, so we're going into the studio now to make the live version. That's coming up next week, which is, well, what are we now? October half term, which is great. And that'll premiere in 2022. So I'm hoping the choreography thing keeps ticking over because I enjoy it. And it's a change for me. It's a different avenue. And like I said, I enjoy it. And the money's good. And keeps me busy, keeps me going. But I wouldn't say no to performing. I don't think I'd rejoin a company. For me, I feel like I'm past that now. Not just my age. I'm only 32, but there's no big life expectancy as a dancer. I always said I would go until my body packs in, but now I'm like, why the hell did I say that? So I'm not saying no to dance ever again, but if there's the odd project or the odd opportunity that pops up, of course, great. But I'm looking into the options now of potentially going back to study. So I'm looking into courses to do with producing, like creative producing. So I'm hoping to do an MA in that in the next year or two, which would be exciting if I can get the funds together for it. And then that will lead me on, hopefully, because the thing is, I've done 10 years now of dance and I've done all the stuff I wanted to do pretty much. So it's, for me now, it's like, right, what does the next 10 years hold? And I know I'm not going to be dancing for all those 10 years. No, so why not start now the foundations for something to grow, and because I want to be as successful as I was as a dancer doing something else. I've always done that. I've always grafted and I've always not wanted to be the best, but wanted to be the best me in order to develop and grow. So I want that from a different career, but I still want to stay in the arts. There's no way I'm leaving the arts.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. Everybody give Liam Riddick a virtual round of applause. An absolutely amazing guest, a master storyteller, and somebody who has got principles as well as great talent in his field as well. So thank you very much, Liam. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very, very special episode of the Rainbow Spotlight. And we are in Leeds today with the owners of the Bookish Type, an independent queer bookshop based in the centre of Leeds.
Hi, I'm Ray. I'm one of the owners of the Bookish Type. We're a queer independent bookshop. We have been we started doing book stalls actually in 2018. So we were doing them at queer venues like Flamingos in Leeds, queer events like Leeds Queer Film Festival. We also did them at Leeds Markets, who are kind of outside of queer venues. And then we knew we always wanted to open up a shop. So we started looking around, found a shop, but then COVID hit. So we had a big dilemma about whether to move into the unit we found or not. We decided to go for it. And so we moved in September 2020. And we have a fabulous little shop, which is upstairs in the Merrion Centre, big shopping centre in Leeds.
Amazing. And we're here now, and it is absolutely amazing. So people, if you haven't been, you need to definitely check it out. But in terms of why you set up, and obviously you did the book stalls first, why was it important to have a queer independent bookshop in Leeds and perhaps more widely in the north of England? Why is that important?
Yeah, okay. So I've always loved visiting queer bookshops and radical bookshops, and I will always go out of my way to go to those places because I think they offer like progressive ideas. You get introduced to different authors, just different sorts of books. So you can, just start exploring different kinds of issues. And so me and my partner, Nicola, we were very inspired actually by both Gaze the Word in London and Category Is, which is in Glasgow. And we just thought, well, why hasn't Leeds got a queer bookshop? It seems a bit odd. It's a really big city. There's a really thriving, vibrant queer scene here. And, it's missing this. So let's do it. Let's set this up. Let's have this space. And also, we wanted a space that was open during the day that was a dry space, and that could be multi-generational, because when you start thinking of queer spaces, like a lot of them, it's kind of nightclub or bar kind of culture, and often catering more for young people than older people. So yeah, we wanted to offer a kind of an alternative, a comfortable, friendly, welcoming space. And I mean, back to why kind of queer bookshops are important in general. I think it's crucial that people just see themselves represented in books. They see their and their community represented as well. You know, it's really important to feel kind of to feel validated and acknowledged, and it just makes you more confident about being yourself in the world. And in terms of community, I think it's really important to then go beyond your individual identity, who you are, and start exploring queer culture and queer communities in general, because there's so many different sorts of people in our communities. You know, we all need to read more widely than just read about ourselves. I think that's really important.
And I think this is why this store is so important, actually. And I'm just looking at a section in the shop now, a big section for children and young people. And during lockdown, which obviously was a challenge for all of us, you set up an online sort of website that allowed you to reach a wider audience. And I'd actually, because my little nephew did really well on a reading challenge at school, so I bought him several books from the Bookish type around different types of families, different types of relationships, etc. And actually, by him reading those 4 books, his thinking and the way he viewed the world and different people changed. And his parents said that, you know, so in terms of, you know, randomly a few months back, I just took him out for a day out, and he just said to me out of the blue, "Uncle Richard, it's okay if a boy likes a boy and a girl likes a girl, isn't it? And people can be who they want to be." And I'm like, I had to stop myself from crying, like in the middle of a bus stop. But it was just completely authentic and genuine. And that's
how old is he?
He was 6 at the time.
Right.
Yeah. So and that's the power of books, isn't it? And that's what did that.
Absolutely. And children can be very open, can't they? And so we do have quite a big children's section. So picture books, board books, books for young readers, and they explore diversity. They show different types of family. So they will show it's important that children know that they're not the only one with lesbian mums, for example. Or, you know, if they are trans, it's important for them to see themselves represented at an early age. Or, you know, or just if children are just gender non-conforming, you know, it's important for them to see that that's okay. So yeah, I'm really pleased. I feel very proud that we're selling those books. And I mean, also, there's been an absolute explosion in books for young adults. So we have 1.5 bookcases. We could easily have more. And I have so many people coming in the shop, often people a lot younger than me, saying, "Oh, I wish this had been around when I was young." I even have people in their 20s saying that, because it makes a difference, you know. And often it's stories where, you know, being lesbian or being trans or being non-binary perhaps isn't even the main issue, but it's just good to see that character there. It's very satisfying, isn't it? That's a rewarding read for people.
And I think that's really important. Like you said, the visibility, seeing representation of different types of families and relationships and genders, it's all vitally important. But in terms of your sort of recommended reads at the moment, if you had to, or what have you read recently that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, well, I've just got to recommend The Transgender Issue by Sean Fay. I mean, we've sold so many copies of those, and it's just brilliant. It is so easy to read. She's written it in quite a kind of a straightforward, journalistic like style, you know, for people who maybe don't know that much about trans issues. It's just very clear and comprehensive, and, you know, from a strong kind of taking a strong kind of left-wing position about liberation rather than just sort of arguments about equality. It's just very, very well done. I would recommend that to anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is amazing, and I've just bought it, people. So I'll bet. So come to Leeds and buy it from the Bookish type, definitely. Yeah. And just sort of rounding off, like you were talking about just before we recorded this about plans for the future and different types of events you might want to do. And so, what's the plans for the Bookish type?
Yeah, well, I would love a bigger shop. I have to say that. So that's like my dream. I'd like to do more events and more collaborations with local kind of queer groups. We've been doing queer history walks around Leeds with a local historian, and they've worked really well. So I think we're going to continue with those. I'd like to do some author events in real life, because we have done some over Zoom with Andrew McMillan, Meg John Barker, amongst others. And they've been great, but it would be nice to properly meet these authors in person. And I've got an idea for maybe doing a queer history club that meets every now and again. I think that would be lovely. And maybe some workshops, writing workshops maybe in the bookshop. I think there's lots of potential.
Yeah, there definitely is, and I think I'd certainly be up for that. And I speak to people, and it's like, I think I'm quite well read, but I'm always learning more about our fabulous, diverse queer history, and there's always something else we can learn, isn't there, through
absolutely.
stories. So if people want to find out more about the Bookish type, whereabouts are you in Leeds? If people want to come and visit you, whereabouts are you? Where should people come?
So we are in the Merrion Centre, which is a very functional 1960s shopping centre, which is great. It's quite close to Leeds University. It's very accessible. Lots of buses go past here. There's parking here. You can also buy from us online. So our website is thebookishtype.co.uk. If you live in Leeds or nearby, you can buy online, and then you can collect from the shop for free. But we sell all around the country. Amazing. So, but it'd be lovely to see you in the shop if you can come along.
Yeah. And do you have social media to all people?
Yeah, so we are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. On Twitter, we are Type Leeds, and on Instagram and Facebook, we are the Bookish Type Leeds.
Amazing. Anything else you want to say?
I would say one more thing, which is we have a pay it forward scheme, and this is really important to us. So I like to think we're redistributing the wealth amongst the queer community. Yeah. So people can donate money if they can afford to, and we put up tags on the little notice board that we've got in the shop, and anyone who can't afford a book can use one of those tags, either when they're in the shop, or they can email in, tell us what they want from our website, and give us their address, and we will send it out. So I'm really pleased that we're doing that. It means that people who don't have much money can afford to get a book.
That's absolutely amazing. Let's support our queer independent sector, people. And I'll just end on this. I am just looking in the Bookish type shop now, and I'm reading a very, very a card what will give you all heart, actually. And it says this. It says, one day you'll wake up and Boris Johnson won't be there anymore, but the Bookish type will. So, and on that note, thank you very much for your time.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Wow, what an episode that was, people. I really did enjoy listening to the amazing stories put forward by Liam and Ray. I think if you want to hear more about them and their stories and what they're up to, please do check out their social media on this episode guide. But also, if you want to keep in touch with Rainbow Conversations and tune into previous episodes and listen to the amazing stories, the amazing inspiring stories from people who have already been on, then please do. So just follow me on Instagram at Rainbow Conversations, or on Twitter at Rainbow Convos. That's all for this episode, people. Join us on the next one, which will amazingly be episode 10. All best, people. See you later.